Thank you. I'm pleased to join my colleagues today, and I want to thank very much Senator Boxer for her leadership on this important legislation. Her record has been a long one of championing the environment, and her leadership on the EPW committee speaks volumes about her commitment to the coastline of her state. And I'm proud to be here with my colleagues, Senator Feinstein and Senator Merkley. You're right, Washingtonians, Oregonians, and Californians are speaking loud and clear today. We do not want drilling off our coasts. President Bush and Congress made a mistake in 2008 by letting a 20-year ban on drilling off the coast of Washington expire. Back then, drill baby drill was a very popular rallying cry, as my colleague just said, and even though we tried to point out that offshore drilling would never lower gas prices or impact our foreign dependence on oil, people still wanted to go ahead. And now, with a horrific oil rig accident continuing to unfold before us in the Gulf, it is all too clear to the majority of our constituents that we were right all along in opposing this drilling. We must act to safeguard our precious coastlines and end the dangerous addiction to fossil fuel. It just doesn't make sense to drill in some parts of our country, and President Obama recognized that when he left out the West Coast in his recent announcement for plans for oil and gas development on the Outer Continental Shelf. The Department of Interior describes the Pacific Outer Continental Shelf like this, quote, "Over much of the Pacific Outer Continental Shelf there is low available resource potential, low interest from the oil and gas industry. There is consistent opposition from the public, the state, members of Congress, and the region for expanding offshore drilling at this time." The Interior Department's assessment is spot on. And here are just a few reasons why we need to prevent drilling off the state of Washington. The offshore geography is deep and the weather is wild. It is dangerous and unwelcome environment for an oil rig. And commercial and recreation fishing in Washington state supports over 16,000 jobs and generates over $500 million annually, and an oil spill would put that in jeopardy. Our marine resources are an important source of protein, an essential component of oceans and the food web, and our Pacific salmon and orca whale population are priceless icons to us. Our beautiful coastline, similar to here what we see in California, is characterized by remote beaches that are very difficult to protect. And many long stretches of the ecological sensitive shoreline are already now protected, like the National Wildlife Refuge and the Olympic National Park. And finally, the coastline is seismically active, susceptible to earthquakes and tsunamis. The nightmare scenario is a natural disaster that not only causes an oil spill, but knocks out our response capability at the same time. Some may ask, well, why is this bill even necessary then? Even if we could safely tap all the oil off Washington shores, it would power our nation's oil addiction for less than 1 month. With such a low resource potential and high challenge, the Northwest has attracted little interest. But Washington state fishermen want certainty. The coastal tourist spots want certainty. My constituents want certainty. They never want an oil rig to blow up and kill Washington workers and then continue to spew oil while executives point the finger at who's to blame. And there's little support for continuing to survey that area for potential oil and gas at taxpayers' expense. So it is simply important that we put forth this legislation today. The West Coast has long been a leader in low-carbon alternatives. We shouldn't become part of the problem. We should become part of the solution. And done right, the transition to increase our national security and protect our environment and create millions of jobs is to get off our addiction to oil and pursue other avenues. So I'm glad to be here with my colleagues today, and I'm certainly glad that our colleague from Oregon, Senator Merkley, has joined us in this effort. The United States has less than 2% of the world's oil reserves. We are not going to affect the price of oil, and we are putting our country at great risk. And California, yes, it had some brownouts and had some experience, and we found out it was because people had manipulated with various schemes during the Enron crisis the way the supply in the market worked. So I think California, in its 20% efficiency reductions, 20% reduction of power through efficiency has led the nation in basically producing new supply, and so I applaud them for that.